Welcome back, everybody, to the Wildcat Fanalytics, the venerable statistician Mike Defoe, um, and me, Jesse Johnson. We are trying to
the,
make
the 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 culture of our show, Jesse
what,
Johnson.
yeah, let's never say that. People hate that word. Um, the romantic fantasy of a harmonized human society played through college basketball. That's my so so we're gonna have some stuff to get through today that surrounds the portal potential for Arizona basketball. We're gonna recap and maybe update a little bit of the power forward stuff. We're gonna get into some specific options around the backcourt and kind of some discussion around like what it is to imagine a roster and how maybe even how we would evaluate Tommy's first three off seasons and how important this one is.
Mm.
So you mentioned that like this is a really critical off season, especially given how each of his first three NCAA tournaments have gone. Is that fair to
Yeah,
say?
let's start there. Yeah, fair to say that the fan base is a little dissatisfied. And look, that's crazy because of how much success he has had. Like, let's be real. Third year head coach. He's got three tournament appearances. He's got a couple Sweet 16s. He's got several conference titles between the actual regular season and the tournament. And obviously near the record or holds the record for most wins in 3 years, right? Either tied it or was one short, something like that. So first 3 years as a head coach. So a lot of winning, but in the end, just a dissatisfied feeling from the fan base for good reason, right?
Yeah.
If you knock on the door as a 1 or 2 seed and you don't make it to the eight, I don't know what the math is, but I'm going to do some cowboy math and it says disappointing.
Mhm.
I think especially interesting is the roster turnover, and I know we some of these guys we were looking at as potential development players that we were hoping, hey, by year 2 or 3, is this guy going to see the court? What are your thoughts there that Tommy brought in these guys and is sort of I don't know if he shuttled them off or if they're just leaving on their own accord, but some of the plans that we had are scuttled.
Yeah, and I don't want to speculate because I this is not an Intel based show. We're not journalists. We're speculative fans.
We try not to speculate, right?
Armchair
Yeah,
analyst. Yeah, it's fun speculation only when it serves to sort of go down a hypothetical. But I
right.
would say my working hypothesis is that Tommy's coaching ethos was formed over a 20-year period where the rules were A, B, and C.
Yeah,
And then right as he became head coach, the rules became D, E, F, G, H, and maybe a
totally.
little bit of A, B, and C. And so I think it's taken him a couple years to catch up to the new reality. I mean, everybody's trying to adjust in the ways that they need to. Tommy's adjusting not only with the rapidly shifting landscape of college basketball and the NIL portal, et cetera, but also to the role of being a head coach, which is no
Hmm.
small thing, as people have documented. So I I wonder if some of the recruiting, like our boy Philly B, um, Paulius Henry, Conrad, I wonder if those guys came, Abdallah Ball. I wonder if those guys came as like he was recruiting them at Gonzaga to some degree, no doubt. He'd been
Sure.
in
Yeah.
touch, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's like I don't want to let go of something that I can have that I love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think we're sort of cleaning out the ways that system is no longer functional in the new reality.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think for me as a fan, I've talked about how it brings up a question of how interested am I in following the sport with the new rules, and that's a question each of us has to answer for ourselves because
Yeah.
it was so it was so meaningful as a fan in the pre sort of like fast track era when you could really count on a player being in a program for 3 to 4 years. Transferring was about as infrequent, it seemed, as like early NBA departure. I mean,
Yeah.
they used to call it hardship. It was like
Yeah.
you had to have like a note from the principal,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to like not go
With
on the
your
field
parents'
trip.
signature on it
Yeah,
too,
right.
you know? Yeah.
And now it's like, what do you mean? Now we're graduating high school early to try to rush the whole thing. It's just it seems like warp speed insanity in certain cases. I mean, obviously there are a lot of kids where they're really empowered, and that's the whole point of it. Like we shouldn't be holding
Yeah.
anyone back from their opportunities. But in terms of a college, you know, systemic understanding, my hypothesis is that Tommy is trying to figure this whole thing out like everybody else, and it doesn't really fit to do a developmental model the way he may have in 2005 at Gonzaga in 2024 at Arizona.
Yeah, and then it's not just at Arizona, right? Because when he was moving on to Arizona, you move from the WCC to the Pac-12, and maybe that's not that crazy of a jump. Maybe that's not that different. You move from the Pac-12 to the Big 12 all of a sudden, that's a big difference. And so, the plans that he had, the experience that he had at Gonzaga and the WCC probably prepared him decently well to be, for how he wanted to go about his business recruiting and roster managing in the Pac-12. You factor in the massive change with the NIL and then and the wide open portal and the sudden shift to actually you're going to go play in the Big 12. I can see why that we would have, some meaningful, serious roster turnover. I do seriously question, where this thing is going to go, and not just us, but generally the college landscape. We all are, but even us as a program, how he manages these rosters. Is there room in the game for developing players on your own roster? You see other teams do it, so there must still be there. Hopefully we've got a couple of guys that are returning for their second or third year. So that's nice, but there are no 4-year returning players on this roster. He's only been here 3, but what I guess would Henry be the only guy on the team that would be here more than 2 years?
That sounds
Right?
right. I'd have to really think about it, but I
Yeah.
think you're right. Your
Yeah. Yeah.
point stands. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he
So
may and
Henry's
he
it.
may and he may be staying for, reasons unrelated to basketball for 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 some of the rumors are,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not even talking about a guy that like has seen action really. Obviously, some of that was being injured last year, but the reality was that he wasn't going to play, and so I don't know. Hopefully we can keep some guys and develop some guys. Let's talk about who should we talk about the Caleb Love question? Should we,
Let's start with, there were a lot of questions about our last episode.
Okay.
People seem to appreciate the landscape. There are two threads that felt a little open. So it's out there in the public arena, that Trey Townsend is visiting Arizona. Many of us knew that a few, a little bit ago. And if you want to be on the inside, check out somewhere like Wildcat Authority where you'll get that information. Trey,
Yeah,
Trey,
that's
did
it.
I just call Trey Townsend is visiting today? He's got two other official visits, and we were fairly flippant about him, maybe even dismissive last time. And I want to
Disrespectful, even.
we
Yeah.
we we dissed the kid. Um,
Yeah.
so I want to just add, as you said, maybe it's a little bit more acceptance based, but a little bit more of a fair, rounded picture of where I've come around to see him. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I'll just preface this by saying, as somebody who used to be a recruiting coordinator,
Mm.
that the my head coach used to say the best recruits are the ones that you can actually get.
Yeah, that's a
And
really good point.
and I used to reach out, much as I'm doing now. I realized I'm recreating my little recruiting game here with our show, which is wildly much more fun doing it in this way than actually recruiting.
Yeah,
I used
there's
to
no
I
actual
used to
consequences.
No, I used to swing for the fences, and I used to call all the top kids, and he'd be like, I love your ambition, but we got to
Let's
spend
get
time on kids that want to be here. And I'm like, but they'll want to be here if they're here, and it worked a few times, but
Yeah.
more often than not, when we look at the portal and we're saying, here are all these guys from a fan's perspective that make better sense, we also understand that Tommy may have a similar view, but for a million reasons, those kids may not be an option for Arizona.
I need him to tell me why I can't have Malik Brown. Okay,
Yes,
I need it
yes.
vocalized to me because he owes me
But
that.
yeah,
I don't
and
know.
and
Yeah.
and I think I think Jason Shear said this on the podcast last week that, and he's right. In my experience, recruiting high school athletes, kids will make decisions to go to certain schools that fans would
Right.
just lose heart. I mean, there's so many bizarre decisions. It is so not often the the reasons and the frameworks that we create as fans where we're like,
Right.
why you want this coach or this program or this success or this city. It's often these other secondary, tertiary elements like
Yeah.
so Malik Brown might have, a sick uncle in Virginia or an older brother or a girlfriend or whatever, and
Yeah.
or NIL or all these reasons that have nothing to do with the actual fit of the program, which is frustrating for fans we know. But
Yeah.
you and I have the luxury now of not being recruiting coordinators, and we just get to play armchair fan. So I decided for myself, you may already be here, Mike, but Arizona is one of the most difficult programs if you're actually trying to do a show where you predict who's going to
Mm,
come because they're so close to the vest and they recruit so few people.
really, really
So
tough.
so what we're doing just to help, our listeners, we're just playing a video game here. We're looking
Yeah.
at the guys, if we were creating a fantasy team for Arizona, who we would want to pursue. But we have
This is
no idea how realistic, if at all, any of them are. And it's probable that Tommy is not
uh,
recruiting Darlin Stone Dubar or Malik Brown or these guys that seem like incredible prospects. It's more like you get one call and you're like, no, that dude needs to stay on the East Coast, or this dude is only in it for an NAL, or this guy's got, discipline problems or
right.
whatever. And you get that intel, and that's where the recruiting stops, and you realize they're not an exit. But it's most likely not that the staff isn't trying or doesn't have interest. So I just wanted to put that out there. Um, and then come back to Trey Townsend, unless there's something you wanted
Yeah.
to add to that.
No, this is now a Twitch stream because we're playing a video game.
Yes, we are. So Trey Townsend's on his visit. Given, the last week
Ah,
since we did our little deep dive,
sorry.
is there anything more you'd want to say about Townsend and his potential fit at Arizona?
I apologize if you commit, let's uh it's you do need to get you do need to have guys that are, that are not as complimentary, that are just like, bucket getters essentially. I don't uh, he wouldn't be my first choice at the four. I think he's undersized. He doesn't have the athleticism to make up for it, and he isn't super efficient in any of his scoring. And so, but hey, I've been wrong before. So his passing seems interesting, although he's very turnover prone. So, it's like, oh, maybe we unlock some passing out of the four, which would be really cool.
Hmm.
Given the ball screen
Hmm.
reads that you could make, you could have like he's like a very small joker, like that kind of
Hmm. Hmm.
making ball screen reads from the
Yeah,
top of the
totally. Totally.
perimeter. So and then I guess I just trust Tommy. I don't I'd like to believe that if his interest is based upon his belief in what Trey Townsend can do, and not based upon, well, look, we're just not going to get anybody else, and like I guess this guy.
Hmm.
So
Default sort of settling. Yeah.
yeah, and that's just me, trying to process this, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a little
Acceptance.
unfair. Yeah, it's a little unfair to Tommy, because obviously we don't know what his thoughts are, and what, like you said, what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and keeping in mind, of course, as we've said a number of times, that any metric never tells the complete picture about
Yeah.
who someone is or what they're capable of. We're simply trying to grasp as much of that truth as possible. And one thing I'll say, when I myself moved that courageous journey from denial to acceptance, I I looked up some of his box scores. I don't know what any of these guys average points or any of that. I'm not even looking through those filters when I'm looking at these guys.
Yeah.
And so I looked at his box scores, and I will say one of the narratives that I start to weave about Trey Townsend when I look at his season, he had some high output games against some of the biggest competition,
Yeah.
and he had a lot, like he engages with a lot of numbers. His box score is never boring.
Hmm.
He's a lot like Caleb Love. He's high usage, so he's either gonna, he's either going to like win it for you or die trying. And
Yeah.
what I can imagine, although you and I cringe about some of the um, lack of metric efficiency on his offensive game, I think what Tommy's realizing is that he needs gamers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Trey Townsend's a gamer.
Yeah. I agree.
I'd like to believe. I even like his overall defensive metrics are really concerning, but he will, much like Tubelis, he will get in that passing lane. He steals a ton of passes, which means he's smart and he can anticipate. So
Yep.
maybe there's enough offensive efficiency in our system that sort of ends up an overall slight plus on the defensive breakdown. He's also a really strong rebounder. So even for his size, maybe some of the rebounding makes up for some of the I really feel discouraged by like finally we got past the drop coverage Ballo sort of, era. Although Ballo did a lot of things really well defensively, he also sort of limited us in what we could do. And I was looking forward to seeing a little bit more of a diverse defensive
Yeah.
attack next year because
Yeah.
Krivas is a little more mobile, even though he's still more Ballo than
We're
Koloko.
probably playing him in a drop, but yeah,
But he's a little more like, you
you can play him
highlighted
up to the
moments.
touch
He
and
can take to
yeah,
the
yeah.
touch. He can sort of play a little more
Hmm.
dangerously.
And he
And
can
now
cover more ground more
but if
easily.
you
Yeah.
put, yeah, if you put him next to a guy who is as limited laterally as Townsend seems to be, then I feel a little disheartened about our ceiling for sure. Yeah,
I don't see Trey Townsend making like helps like weak side
totally,
blocks like
totally,
in defensive rotations that are like going to cause disruption. But
totally.
we'll see. You
We'll
know.
see. And he may not,
Yeah.
he may not come. So
Yeah.
th
Yeah. This could all be for
then
naught.
then we'll see what they decide. So, in response to that, I've got two guys that I didn't get to last week. One is a new guy that everybody knows. Another one is my like, I love these Moneyball guys, these guys that are
Mm.
flawed but kind of show some really sleeper potential. Can I review these real quick?
Yeah.
And
Let's
then
jump in.
we're gonna get into Mike's picks for potential Caleb Love replacements or compliments.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to y'all about this intriguing 6'7". He's listed as a small forward, but I think he could be definitely a hybrid. He's big enough. He's 6'7", 215. This kid from Minnesota,
Mm.
Joshua Ala Joseph. Um, again, he's not going to be Malik Brown and certainly not Dalton Connect, but he's really interesting in the things he excels at. So check some of these numbers out. He has a
Oh
67%
yeah,
true
baby.
shooting percentage. He has a 65% effective field goal percentage. He's 76% at the rim. He's, as you can see there on the screen, he's 54% from the corner three. He's a 40%, he's a 35% three-point shooter overall. Nope, sorry, 40% three-point shooter overall. 23% of his shots come from three. He doesn't have anything in the mid-range. That's definitely, similar to Keyshawn Johnson, a little bit of a weakness.
Hmm.
He's listen to these percentiles. Oh, his foul rate's really good, 35%,
Mm.
and he shoots over 70% from the line. So that's like, that's hold serve at least from a wing forward position. Listen to these percentiles. So you can see right there the catch and shoot, he's in the 75th percentile. The spot up, he's in the 84th percentile. On cuts, he's in the 90th percentile. These are all points per possession. On
Hmm.
putbacks, this is something I found really intriguing. On putbacks, he's in the 95th percentile. So the kid can rebound. He's not a rebounding machine like Townsend, but he can rebound and can hit the offensive glass and actually scores almost as well as anyone. And he's 93rd percentile in transition efficiency. He can really run the floor. So all these things to me are Arizona relevant because they relate to what we need. Um, the downside is he has shown very little propensity to defend, similar to Towns. Not that he's terrible. He probably grades out more like a Marascus.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't see much of his game as he's actually similar to Keyshot. He's a hybrid of Keyshot and Marascus. And if you took
You're
him,
saying he's an insane defender who can shoot threes.
he's he's
No.
he's the perfect, like if you put Dylan Mitchell, who we'll profile in a second, and this kid together, they'd be in the NBA All-Star game next year. He is an average defender who doesn't. I mean, he's like Keyshawn in the sense that he's not really a natural passer or facilitator like
Yeah,
Townsend. Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
Um,
What do you think?
what's really strange to me is he didn't get a whole lot of minutes this year. He actually got fewer minutes this year per game than he did last year.
Yep,
On a relatively bad Minnesota team, right?
yep. So here's the
Um,
mystery. I actually
yeah.
did my homework this time.
Okay.
So he started for like the first 2/3 of the season,
Uh-huh.
and then they replaced him and he barely played the last like 10 or 12 games. But he had a ton of double figure scoring games. His efficiency is off the chart. Like this is a kid that
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with him. I would imagine there's something chemistry wise that they took him out
Yeah.
of the lineup because he was
Hmm.
productive as hell. They have this other kid. What's his name? Shoot, I lost it. But this kid came in, this 6'9" kid who's looks to be a better defender and pretty efficient, but more of a like pure down low uh
Hmm.
rim kind of kid that's probably just a better defensive player. Um
Um,
yeah, so
that's
I don't
really
know.
interesting.
He's a sleeper.
So
He's a mystery,
yeah,
a
so
project.
and I didn't check the show notes, or I did, but I missed this one. But I just dug in really briefly. He played high school in Arizona. He's from Compass Prep, which is Kylan Boswell's former school. I believe it was Kylan's former school.
Mm,
So that's uh that's interesting.
that's
I think he only
interesting.
had. It says he had like minimal D1 offers heading into his senior year, and then all of a sudden
Hmm.
started getting some D1 offers. Clemson, Minnesota, Cal Poly, Colorado State. But so it seems like maybe a late bloomer, diamond in the rough, and
He
I
could
don't hate it.
I like it in the sense that he he's incredibly efficient from the field and can score at least three levels. He can't,
Yeah.
he has no mid-range game. I don't think he's going to facilitate. I don't think he's going to attack. I don't think he's going to pass. But maybe that stuff can develop. The thing I like about him, and part of the theme here that we're going to get into with the guards too, this kid was sixth on Minnesota in field goal attempts. So he's
Hmm.
like what we're looking for here is could he come in and potentially come off the bench if a guy
Yeah.
like Bryant really blossomed, because the tricky thing you have here is you have to have, if you're going to start someone over Carter Bryant or you're going to start someone over Joe Sanon, you're going to need a really clear definitive reason, and you're
Hmm.
probably going to need a senior,
Yeah.
and this kid is neither of those. So, but he's coming off the bench for Minnesota. Does he say, "Hey, I can be in the rotation at Arizona and play for playing time and be a heck of an offensive player and get opportunities at 15, 18 minutes a game in the Big 12?" He'd certainly be
I like the
really,
pitch.
really solid offensively.
Send send it up. Send it up to the big guy.
All right, Tommy, there you go. Joshua Ola Joseph,
That's
sophomore
a good
from
catch.
Minnesota. Okay,
Yeah.
here's a more obvious one that everybody's curious about. He's an extreme case. I'll have you kind of run through Mitchell.
Yeah, so Dylan Mitchell out of Texas, not to be confused with Mark Mitchell out of Duke, both insane athletes. So Dylan Mitchell is just an absurd athlete, as you can see. 6'8", 6'9" ish, not super built. So he's not like a monster as far as his physique, but a heck of a leaper and pretty darn good size still at the four position. You can see he finishes at 76% at the rim, which is awesome. We just
Monster at the
absolutely
rim.
love that. The
Yes,
trouble is that is literally the only place that he
he
scores.
cannot shoot the ball.
He can't shoot the ball for the life of him. He can't. If you thought Omar Ballo was bad at free throws, you should see Dylan Mitchell just try to take any jump shot. But
Not that
uh,
bad. All
yeah,
right, let's
maybe
see. Let's see. Here we go.
he's a bonkers. Yeah, he's a
He's a
bonkers
defensive
defender.
he's a defensive monster that could guard 1 through 5, which to me
Def-
is so
yes,
invaluable.
yeah, and rebounds the heck out of the ball.
Yes.
So could we, does he need a little shining from old Tommy and his big magic? Um, Maybe, yeah. I mean, like maybe he could clean up his offensive game and get him to be more of a two-way player. But even if he wasn't, I don't, it's we're never gonna have a perfect
No.
team, right? There's always gonna be flaws. So would I accept a four that could play the five maybe as a small five and give us some defensive versatility? Score buckets at the dunker spot, maybe be a roll man. Yeah, man, I kind of like that.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, this gets into the bigger conversation. So let's have that. So when we think about where someone could fill in given Tommy's strengths and given the program and the roster as it is, you know, what would be the benefit of coaching up a guy like Dylan Mitchell versus coaching up a guy like Trey Townsend?
Yeah. Yeah, I just think Dylan Mitchell gives you, I think, and we're talking about archetype, so I don't mean him
Mhm.
specifically, but
Yep.
the archetype of more of a defensive focused guy that rebounds really well and scores super efficiently at the basket and can slide to the five. That really plugs a lot of holes for this Arizona roster when you're thinking about, oh, we've got so much skill and kind of questionable or how tough or how stat stuffy are these guys and St. and Bryant and Krivas. Well, you plug in a Mitchell and you're like, well, that takes those concerns off the table. That's a defensive monster team. Now, are people going to pack the paint on us? Sure. They're
Yep.
probably going to do it anyway. We were a really, really efficient 3-point shooting team last season, and no one really gave a hoot. So
And
I don't
the
know.
great thing about not being able to shoot is that you won't shoot yourself out of games. I like maybe we just like not, I'm kind of serious. Like maybe if
Oh, yeah, I
it's
like
not,
it.
maybe if it's not an option,
It's not on the
then
table, man.
you're just attacking the rim and either you're getting a bunch
Yeah,
of offensive fouls called or you're getting to the
yeah,
free throw line or you're making layups. And I could live with that
yeah,
a
yeah.
little more than, 5 for 28 or whatever we were against Clemson.
Yeah, and then on the Townsend side, you worry about having and look, we were able to get a much better efficiency out of Caleb Love. Tommy was. In the end, it wasn't that, unfortunately, but you bring in Townsend and you're rolling the dice again on like, oh, we can definitely taper, tone down the bad stuff and focus on the good stuff and really get him to be a high efficiency guy. I don't know.
I like that
Maybe,
as a power forward, he's not initiating as much, and so there's a little bit more there's a little bit more that he has to depend on to get shots. And I think if he's getting
mhm.
better shots, then we're counting on him finishing
we,
more efficiently.
we're talking Townsend.
Townsend and maybe feeling less pressure to create or that I won't get enough shots.
Yeah. So, he had 100 plus assists last season, 90, I think 111 assists or something, and like 90 something turnovers. And then one of the things that we keep talking about, at least among ourselves and on the Wildcat Authority board, well, you can run offense through him and like I said, like, oh, he's a tiny little joker. Um, you know, uh, it, it, I just don't know if I'm like, hey, yeah, man, like Trey Townsend's gonna be the one to bail us out every game. Um, but the flip on that is Dylan Mitchell certainly isn't going to be the one to bail us out in any game. What I do just wonder is do we have enough shooters on the team or enough guys who can score? And I think we kind of do. Maybe they're young, but I think that you kind of do that if you can. You got a guy rebounding like that and defending and being able to slide to the five and play some defense like that. Where it's more mobile and you can contain off the perimeter. That would be, that's interesting to me.
And I think you also have to contextualize the strength of the system and the staff. And I think if it were Sean Miller, I might be erring more towards a Trey Townsend. But Tommy's proven, certainly in 3 years and before that, that offense over the long haul, offensive efficiency is not really why we're going to lose games. And so with Tommy, I'm really comfortable erring on the side of athleticism, defensive versatility, because even a guy like Mitchell, if he can only score at one level, this system's going to get him a lot of
It will get him
baskets.
looks at those level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because so I mean, I think like yes, you're going to run into games where you pack the paint, you went 3 for 22 from three, and you lost. But I think you got to look at the overall systemic approach and trust that you're still going to be 30-6 and give yourself a shot in that moment where you need to buckle down and stop someone. And then if you can't score on the other end, um, sure, then we can talk about that. But I think he has an easier time manufacturing offense than defense so far. So I like the idea of erring on the athletic, versatile side. Let's transition to guards if you're okay with it,
Yeah.
just from a time standpoint.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna have you go over you have two selections, and these are specifically guys that you think are good enough to play a replacement role. And I think why don't you talk a little bit about, the freshmen and how you're seeing, the
Yeah,
strategy around them.
that's a great place to start with it. Because we have three really, really talented. We have four freshmen coming in. With three really, really talented guys who can fill it up. Two specifically that play the guard position. In Jocelyn Sanon and Jamari Phillips. Both of those guys are extreme bucket getters. I mean, these guys can shoot off the bounce really, really, really well. So this is not just like catch and shoot. I mean, these are guys that you can put the ball in their hands and they can take a couple of dribbles, get to their spot, and light it up. And then Carter Bryant, as a 3-4, who also can really fill it up. Now, if Caleb Love says he's not coming back, and he's in the testing the draft waters right now, and he has eligibility where he can still come back, and he said he's going to consider that. But if he doesn't come back, do you just rely on a Sanon and a Jamari Phillips, or which I love, but I recognize that the game is older than it used to be. Or do you need to go fill somebody in? If you're gonna go fill somebody in, and I'm open to that, man, I couldn't imagine somebody better than Rylan Griffen. Um, this kid is 3-and-D all over. Just an insane 3-point shooter, a heck of a defensive prospect, long, good functional athleticism. And so that's my number one guy. I just think that he would be a great play finisher for Arizona. And that's my dude.
He's got, a rare portal guard with an NBA potential future. He's got
Yeah.
give me a 6'6" guard who can shoot 40% from three and defend multiple positions all day. I mean, that guy in the
And
portal is, I mean, that's why he's transferring, right? He's super valuable.
yeah. And scores 67% at the rim, right? So I mean, this is like we're not talking about like just
We're not talking
some
about
little guy.
Courtney Ramey.
Yeah, exactly. He was like he's not going to be able to get up to the top of the rim. Um, so yeah, I mean, I imagine he's going to be like you said, it's in super demand. But if we had an open spot at the three, like that would be really enticing, maybe. And
Mhm.
given the passing that we're likely going to get out of JB, out of Jaden Bradley and KJ Lewis, who
And
KJ Lewis
Lewis.
is hyper underrated
Well,
passer,
and
right?
to be fair, if we had Townsend and or Bryant, those two are
Hmm.
really good passing fours.
Yeah, totally. And so, or at least yeah, active passing, right? Like these guys aren't total black holes. So his ability, I think he would have enough gravity and then he'd be so deadly off of a driving kick or something that that he would feast and he'd be a really good fit. So rah rah, Tommy, go give him a call.
I love this kid. He's an easy take for me, but especially as you say, when you're complimenting guys like Bradley and Lewis, you add a guy who actually could add to the defensive tenacity and
Hmm.
add to the much needed shooting that will be pretty vacant. I also wanted to mention about Townsend. The kid can shoot the three. He hasn't shot a high volume, but he definitely wherever he goes, I would imagine he'll shoot the three. I think he shot 37% last year. So he's not
Yeah.
like, keep in mind Keshad came in having shot in the
Right.
low 20s and he ended up at 40. That seems to have been a strength with Tommy that every transfer who comes in has shot really well from three, at least catch and shoot. Yeah.
Like you said, the system does produce really good shots, right?
Yeah.
So number two, guy I was looking at last year that I wanted last year in the portal.
Oh, this is my guy. Yeah. Not your
based
guy.
on faith.
Yeah.
Anthony.
Your guy that I recently found. Yeah.
Nice, yeah. Anthony Dell'Orso. I think that's how you pronounce his name,
Yep.
Dell'Orso. I think he's Australian and he plays for the Campbell Camels,
Like Cedric
who
Henderson.
like Cedric Henderson.
Mhm.
He is just a big guard.
Yeah.
It's like Rylan Griffen. He plays with good size. I think he's 6'6". Can score at the rim. Not quite the 66 or 67 that Griffin is, but 63 is solid. We like that, and is more of a much more of a creator, just
Mm.
much more of a creative player
Mm.
than Griffin. The defense is something I'd have to look into, but he looks like a pro to me.
Mhm.
And I thought so last year when I saw his transfer tape. The efficiency wasn't there last year, but you could see just um, the creativity and the vision and yeah. So that he's another big guard. I'd play at the 3 that I would take in a heartbeat.
I think his Evan Maya defensive numbers, at least for whatever that's worth, are pretty good.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I
So yeah,
think.
I didn't
Yeah.
I didn't I didn't dig deep, but I don't need to dig deep because I love his offense so much. He's a good defensive rebounder, and that may just bolster it. I always question about defensive rebounding like
Mhm.
the from like the 3. I think back to Alonzo Trier who did like the Carmelo defensive rebound where you know come out of here. It's like you're going to snatch it from a teammate because that's just your stat stuff in a little bit.
Right, right.
But anyway, yeah. So yeah, big fan of his. He wasn't crazy. I think his passing just wasn't really efficient in passing. I didn't get a negative assist to turnover, unfortunately, but I think Tommy can fix him.
Yeah. I like this kid similarly. I like
This is a
this
great
kid.
find.
This kid is similar to Dell'Orso. He's a
Hmm.
big guard from Cornell
Yeah.
that's hyper efficient, probably one of the most efficient guards I've found. Let me
Mm,
see. I'm going on hoop math. These guys are a little
yeah.
whack. Um, where's my good old notes here on Chris Manon or Manon?
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, 60. Yeah, he's 63% true shooting percentage, 61% effective field goal, which is
Yeah, it's
incredible
great.
for a guard. He's 71% at the rim, not 69, 71% at the rim. He's 42% in the mid-range, which is one of those
Love that.
really intriguing numbers. And then 34% from 3, surprisingly, is where he's weakest. You can see his shot's a little flat. And I think maybe that's something that the shot doctor could fix. So I don't worry about it too much. He has spots on the floor, as you can see, where he hits pretty efficiently, but um, that's kind of like on the way up, I think, his 3-point shot. His foul rate is solid, 32%. He gets to the line and he can make free throws. He's a uh, heck of a scorer in transition. He's a great passer. His one of his strengths is his assist rate. But what I like is that Cornell really runs a similar kind of read and react offense, and he seems to be able to distribute at a high level. So, I don't think he is a guy that necessarily raises Arizona's ceiling, but what he does is he certainly doesn't make many mistakes, and he's going to make the team first play. He's going to do things really consciously. He's also he will be a senior. So I was looking at
Hmm.
guys that could play 1 year, and he's an experienced player who could be really, really good and play with any of the other guards, which is another qualification I had. Do
Yeah.
you know anything about him?
Yeah, no, just what I know is the video that I saw right before we hopped on, and
Okay.
the kid plays with abandon. I
Yeah.
mean, he when you think Ivy League and you think
Yeah.
but other than hey, we got our butts kicked by a bunch of nerds a couple of years ago, um, usually you're not thinking like a guy that's like blowing down the lane to tomahawk it
Mhm.
on fools, but he
There it
does
is,
like
right there. Yep.
yeah. I mean, like he'll get ahead of steam and go.
Yep.
And so in a lot of ways that reminds me of what KJ Lewis does, where he's gonna get downhill. He's
Yeah.
gonna he's gonna create penetration, and then he can pass out of it, or he's going to create a relatively efficient shot at the rim. So I'm a take. Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. So I think defensively he's solid. I mean, his Evan Maya numbers are solid. I just watching him, I wonder how he would handle, the athleticism of the Big 12. But his offense, similar to Joshua Ala Joseph, his offense is scarily efficient. And if you can coach the
Hmm.
defense, he'd be a good take for Sean Miller. Um, so again, probably nobody that is on Tommy's radar. But if we're playing armchair, uh,
It
Dubar
was
Dubar's
it,
gone.
yeah. Dubar's gone to Tennessee. Unfortunately, he was probably the most efficient scorer in the portal.
I gotta I
There's a
gotta
reason we
do
didn't look at him.
I got to do this real quick so we can allay our supporters because people are asking about Jordan Pope who I know it's easy to fall in love with players who torched Arizona. I think this kid is he's a nice player who's going to get a lot of buckets somewhere. I don't know how good of a fit he is for Arizona given his lack of size, his usage, his really poor defensively. And
Yeah,
he's a
insane.
really solid shot maker. He's not like an aggressive facilitator. He's like a 6'1" Philly B. Is that fair?
So, yeah, probably. Yeah.
With
So,
with a
yeah,
lot more on his resume. I mean, I don't mean to.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
more says more about that I think highly of Philly B.
Thank you. As a
Just
Philly
that
B water
he's a
carrier to
usage
this
guy.
day.
He's a usage
Yeah, he
guy.
is.
He wants the ball and he wants to score. Yeah.
It's one of my least favorite archetypes of players,
Yeah. Yeah.
unfortunately. And I
Yeah.
know that people that watch highlights or just watch the Arizona game like love that kind of guy because you go, oh
Yep.
my gosh, but look what he can do. And
Look
it's
what
like,
he
yeah,
did.
you're not seeing the other things that he's not doing, which is playing
Right.
defense and
Right.
distributing and rebounding.
So full credit to my person on Wildcat Authority. I don't know what your name for Etsy or something like that. Sorry, I misguided your handle, but mishandled you. But thank you for that suggestion. Fortsy. Shout out. Jordan Pope is an inspired idea. However, I don't think maybe this year would be the fit. We'll see though. What do I know? Here is a kid that I find very fascinating from a sleeper standpoint, because again, what I'm looking for is guards who could pretty much play with anybody and not disrupt the freshmen.
I like it.
Something we didn't really talk too much about, but I want somebody who can come in and
Yeah, I don't want to lose
fit
the
in multiple
freshman.
roles. Yes,
I don't want to lose them.
this kid Reuben Jones out of North Texas. I'm curious to see what you think. Here's something interesting. He's 6'5". He can
Like
play either guard position in my mind, but he's mostly a point guard. He actually likes to back down, as you can see there. He's not
that's
hyper
hilarious.
efficient at the rim. His efficiency is a little Trey Townsend-esque.
Yeah,
Um, but he shoots
scaring me
40,
with that rim percentage, but we
but he,
fixed that before.
well, and he shoots 41% from three.
Ooh, I love
So
that.
he's a guy that you want maybe having to carry less of the load getting into the paint because he's willing. He's a willing paint guy,
That's
um,
good.
which is great. Like he shot 29% of his shots at the rim. He's not hyper efficient. He's a little bit better than Boswell
It's
for
got a pretty good free
reference.
throw rate. Yeah.
Great free throw rate or good free throw rate. 26% assist rate. He's really good in attacking ball screens, which is something that we've really struggled with our point guards. Bradley looks to be maybe offering some hope in that regard, but we haven't had
Hmm.
a point guard who can consistently keep the ball screen honest in his attack. This
Hmm.
guy's very unafraid. I like his tenacity. I like his aggressiveness. He's got a nice looking shot, and the 3-point percentage um, says some good things. And he's 6'5" and is a senior. He could play either. He could play with Phillips. He could play with Sanan. I like that he's a point guard because if we don't have Love coming back and we don't want Conrad playing 15
Oh,
minutes a
that's
game.
right.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm looking
you
at
do need a
guards that can
backup.
play either position.
Yeah, also all defensive for his conference. So for
Nice.
Conference USA. So this is not a guy who's going to shy away from the duties on the site on the other end of the floor like Jordan Pope. And then somewhat meaningful kid from Texas has played in Texas his whole career. So the feel of the Big 12 while he's obviously not playing at
Mhm.
that level right now. He's not he knows these guys, right? These are the
It's
guys he's
his
been playing his whole
territory.
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. I love
So
that.
I like some of that.
Yeah,
Um,
and also when you're thinking about competitive NIL, like some of these guys are more
Right.
realistic for Arizona coming from Campbell in North Texas than they are maybe from Syracuse. Shout out
If
Malik
we're
Brown.
if we're gonna afford Malik Brown, then we need to take some cuts on some other ends. That's how the game works.
Good points. Last but not least, maybe my favorite find. This
These are good
kid.
ones. I got to keep patting you on the back. I love
uh,
it. Keep them coming.
all right. Well, this is a kid I'm very intrigued by. Again, probably an East Coast kid who would never even look at Arizona, but this is senior Dre Davis, 6'6",
Mm,
210. Um, awesome size for a guard. He can sort of play in the post, but he also is efficient from the perimeter.
hmm
50% of his shots are at the rim where he's not. I mean, where does 57% rim finishing qualify as a shooting guard? Is that decent? Love was
It's
around
decent,
60.
right?
Love was
Yeah, yeah,
62.
yeah,
So he's not
yeah.
great, but here's what I like. 46% in the mid-range, which is almost a quarter of his shots. So he can get
Whoa.
in, he can come off the ball screen and hit that 17-footer that always bugs the hell out of us when Purdue does
Uh,
it.
Yeah, yeah. When the other team's playing a drop, it's like the most deadly thing that you can do to them is just continue to, like, they say take the mid range and you say yes, please.
Right. He's 35% from three, quarter of his shots are from three. So that's certainly a workable number. His shot is good. He's a good cutter. Some of the secondary items that line up well with Arizona, he's off the dribble. His effective field goal percentage is in the 85th percentile. So again,
Mm,
like just working
mm.
that ability to attack.
Ooh, I like
Um,
it.
his spot up game is 79th percentile, and his
Hmm
transition efficiency is 70th percentile. So all that screams Arizona. I like that he was not a featured player in their offense. So the trick would be he's kind of an in-between guy. Like, I don't know if you can sell Joson Sainin or Jamari Phillips on this kid starting over them. But if this kid is the type of kid who's like, sure, I'll come to a Big 12 school because I'm playing at Seton Hall and
Yeah,
I'll be the sixth man who can play with any of those guards. You could play him at the three, you could play him at the two, you could almost play him at the four, small ball four, because he's not afraid of that, and he's a really versatile defender. So that's Dre Davis.
that's interesting.
He's the closest thing to a guard version of Malik Brown in terms of my excitement.
Oh, no kid. I mean, wow, that says a lot. I do dig that.
Poor man's Malik
Yeah,
Brown.
yeah, yeah. I do dig that he was in the ACC at Louisville for a couple of years. It looks like he was at Seton Hall in the Big East. These are real conferences. I think that matters.
Mhm,
And so as we're projecting these guys and we're saying, oh man, Anthony Dell'Orso, as you come out of Campbell, you're going to be great.
mhm.
There's a little who knows that in that, but cool to see a guy that spent 4 years in big conferences, and yeah, you could have him come in as a fifth year senior, and either start or be just in the rotation as part of a championship threatening team. That's a good pick. I saw he had a 4% block percentage too, which is the guy is
He's
the
a
guy's
really
giving
good
effort.
defender. He's a really good
Yeah.
defender. He may not be yeah, he may not be elite, but I think you put him next to KJ and Jaden, another reason I like these big guards is because we're kind of small. So
hmm
you put him in there, and that's a heck of a defensive, point of attack that we can now build around and perhaps cover up when you're talking about guys like Krivas and Townsend. Though I
Yeah.
think Krivas will be solid, when he gets the hang of it. That's who I got. Let
Um,
me see. Is there anyone else we forgot? Reuben Jones, I got.
I'm drafting Dre Davis
Okay.
and Rylan Griffen, and we're done here. We have just enough money for Malik Brown, and we're going to the Final Four.
I
Yeah,
like
probably
it.
not. Um, it will be crazy interesting. It felt a little strange to hypothesize with you today when we have this massive thing looming over our head, which is just what is Caleb Love going to do? And so because that just so fundamentally changes how the rest of this roster shakes out, right? What do you need out of the rest of the roster? Where on the depth chart do the freshmen get pushed to? And especially like you mentioned, you lose Love, who I think we could play as a backup point guard.
Yeah.
He played as a point guard in high school, or at times played as a point guard for his first year at UNC to various levels of success. But yeah, I think you could play him as the 10 minutes per game behind JB, and you'd feel fine now. And with Conrad or even a KJ, as you know, you can
With
fill in, or
Jamari. Hmm.
Jamari, right? Who styles himself as a point guard, maybe more of a shooting guard. But you lose Love, and then you're going, well, gosh, I guess we do need not only a guy to get buckets, but and so is that the freshman maybe? And now we need a point guard. So it's yeah, it's it the these guys, these coaches, they don't have it easy, right? I mean,
No, the musical
this is tough
chairs
stuff.
I know. Yeah, and waiting for Love, as a lot of teams are in the similar position. But it sounds like from all accounts, Love is genuinely 50-50 in terms of
Yeah.
what the intel gives him. So it is important to wait, because if you don't honor that, then you're creating, you're burning bridges, and that's it's such a tough position to be in as a coach, I can imagine.
Yeah. You can't commit to a guy and then Love comes and then leave the door open for Love, and then Love says, hey, I want to come back. You take him back. And then what do you do with the guy that you just took?
Right.
I don't, it's just not in time. Like, so, look, some coaches I'm sure would just make that choice and figure it out when that time comes, if it did. Eric Musselman. But but obviously I don't think that's in Tommy's that's not the shape of his heart, you know what I mean?
No.
So um yeah, it's yeah, I think the only boon for us is that Caleb is going to be making that decision towards in about 4 weeks realistically. So that's how much time we have. So as we're like, you and I are shopping right now, it's like
Ah,
we
we're gonna
probably won't
miss
have
all those
any.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah, we probably won't have any clarity for 4 weeks. However, he's not the only one doing that, right? Like every other guy that is
Yeah.
an early entrant that is testing draft waters, like Pella did last season,
Yeah.
that has their name out there and that says, "Look, actually, I got a G League Combine invite. I didn't get an NBA invite. I don't want to go. I can make more or as much at Arizona. I have better opportunity to showcase, blah blah, quality of life. My aunt is friends with the assistant coach or whatever the reason that people commit. So maybe as we get down the road, there are going to be potential like guys that we're not focused on, that aren't technically in the portal. They're focused on the draft, but could re-enter the portal.
Yeah.
And those guys are probably pretty darn talented because they have draft aspirations right now,
Totally.
right?
Yeah, and that's what they have to trust, which is cool, and it's worked pretty well so far. So,
It has.
um, you know, yeah. So next time maybe we'll see where things are. We might take some space to see how things shake out, because there's a lot of guys, like we skipped a bunch today, that you could check out. Ryan
Yeah.
Conwell, Corin Johnson. These are pretty much um, guys that probably will be off the board by the time Love decides. But it's interesting and fun to go through the different archetypes and possibilities, and maybe we'll have a version 2 post Love decision on this conversation. Um, but yeah, thanks for doing this today. I always appreciate your statistical acumen and research ability. And thanks everybody for listening. Let's hope the next time we talk that there'll be some exciting, roster movement.
Some good news roster movement.
We got to be able to field a team.
I'm sure we'll get there. Thanks, guys.
Bear down.